Discoveries regarding ancient civilizations are fascinating. So today we'll be taking a look at these archaeological discoveries. Copper receipt of the Sumerians, often regarded by researchers as being the oldest surviving written account in human history. Others have referred to the copper receipt of the Sumerians as the oldest customer service document to have ever existed. Within this strange tablet, written with cuneiform, details a strange story featuring two shopkeepers, a messenger, and a number of references to raiders and tribesmen attacking the region. According to the copper receipt, the writer of the tablet, a business owner, had made a deal with another Sumerian business owner detailing the sale of a large amount of high-quality copper to be used for crafting. According to the writer, he had sent a messenger to the other business owner to retrieve the high-quality copper. However, the business owner took back his word and kept the payment ahead of time and told the messenger to take back a low grade of copper and that he should take it or leave it, but that nothing would change. This angered the writer, as he claims to have been a good business partner and does not understand where this sudden disrespect came from, and that he demanded to be reimbursed with the higher grade of copper, as he claimed that the messenger does not have an easy task as he must venture between unsafe lands that hold raiders and attackers waiting to steal goods of all kinds. This has led researchers to believe that businesses, markets, trades, and contracts were far more must have been on par to that of later dynasties given the references to weapons, use of metals and coppers, as well as the intricate use of language involving cuneiform that had previously believed to have been limited. Da Vinci's robotic contraptions. For a brief moment of his life, Leonardo da Vinci worked as a chief military engineer for the Italian army and worked at designing new and innovative weapons of war to assist with the influence of his country and the political gain of those closest to him. This led to a wide variety of new and interesting designs created by the inventor to help with war efforts whenever necessary. Many of these designs include helicopter-like aerodynamic machines capable of flight, large trebuchets, catapults, and engineered ways to get over large stone walls without sacrificing any men, as well as a variety of ancient tank designs powered by horses or protected gears. These all pale in comparison to Leonardo da Vinci's greatest hidden invention, the robotic knight. After Leonardo da Vinci was put in charge of a pageant in Milan by the Duke at the time, he felt compelled to design an interesting machine that could replicate the movements of a man completely independently. This led to the design of a suit of armor filled with mechanical gears and wheels connected to an internal pulley and cable system that could do a variety of functions on its own. Back in 2002, Mark Rochiam discovered several of these robotic knight notes and used the designs to recreate the robot in the modern day. Not only did he find that the robot was completely balanced, but that it was capable of independent motions such as walking, waving, sitting down, standing up, and moving its head and lifting its visor. These designs would later be stolen and used by NASA in developing their own cutting-edge Queen Nefertiti and Ramesses II. The ancient civilization of Egypt has intrigued us for many years. We have found some incredible artifacts that have given us a small insight into how this empire operated. Archaeologists in Egypt have recently found a 6,000-year-old tomb complex. Inside these chambers, they discovered dozens of cat mummies and rare scarab which were also mummified. They were all found inside a 5th dynasty tomb, and the researchers have announced they plan to show these discoveries to the public. Interestingly enough, researchers and Egyptologists have said there's likely more of these undiscovered chambers scattered around the pyramids, and that uncovering them will give us a better understanding of Egypt's past. One thing researchers have come forward and said is that Queen Nefertiti could be hiding in one of these secret chambers. She is considered a powerful and respected woman of the past. Queen Nefertiti was queen of ancient Egypt from 1353 to 1336 BC, and may have even ruled over her kingdom after her husband passed away. Nefertiti is an icon and perhaps best known for her beauty and power. Going back to 1913, an incredible bust of hair was discovered and it instantly became a hit with the general public. From that moment on, she would grab the attention of millions worldwide and became one of the most recognizable faces of ancient Egypt. Although she is perhaps one of the most famous figures from ancient Egypt, some of her history is shrouded in mystery. Egyptologists have suggested that she may be the daughter of Ai, her top advisor who would go on to become pharaoh after King Tut's death. Recently, A team of British and Egyptian archaeologists scanned King Tut's tomb. This took the researchers over 3 days, but they've said it could help to unravel one of the biggest ancient mysteries. Previous scans of King Tut's chamber showed researchers that there are other chambers and organic materials behind the walls. This could suggest that the famous Nefertiti is buried in one of these unknown chambers. However, as of today, researchers have not been able to locate the famous queen. Any news that comes out about Queen Nefertiti is purely speculation. Another fascinating discovery in regard to ancient Egypt is the giant bust of King Ramesses II that was recently discovered. Incredibly, it was found in a slum, and after Egyptologists inspected it, they said it would have been over 25 feet tall. Ramesses II was also known as Ramesses the Great. He was the third pharaoh of the 19th dynasty and led his people into a new era. He was known as a great warrior and was respected by all across his kingdom. During his time, he had over 200 wives, 96 sons, and 60 daughters. One of the reasons Ramesses the Great was viewed as godlike was because of the age he lived to. He passed away in his 90s, and incredibly, he outlived most of his own children. He ruled over ancient Egypt for 67 years and was perhaps one of the most admired ancient kings. Many giant statues of him have been found all over Egypt. Egyptologists have said there is virtually no ancient sites in Egypt which do not mention Ramesses the Great. The mystery of Roman concrete, though many will claim that our modern-day concrete is equivalent to that of ancient Roman concrete, educated researchers are well aware of the lost technology and how our modern-day construction efforts pale in comparison to that of ancient Rome. For reasons not entirely known, Roman concrete was capable of setting and hardening even one underwater, as well as the fact that the concrete structures were far more stable and capable of support stress than modern-day concrete, of which requires the addition of rebar to handle tensile strength to prevent the concrete from breaking down. The use of this concrete allowed the Roman Empire to accomplish engineering feats that rival even the greatest construction efforts of the modern day, and to have formed structures millennia ago that will more than outlast any modern-day constructions fitted with the greatest techniques in building. In fact, researchers estimate that if humans were to disappear, the last standing man-made would be that of the ancient pyramids of Giza and those made using Roman concrete. Namib Desert Fairy Circles, located in the Namib Desert, down near the northwestern Cape Province of South Africa. There appears to be a countless number of peculiar formations in the sand that have left researchers scrambling to try to find a reasonable explanation as to the course of the strange phenomena that appears almost artificial in nature. First recorded back in the 1920s, researchers began to notice that all throughout the Namib were arid grass formation circles that were evenly scattered across the entire land. These arid grass formations would shortly thereafter be referred to as fairy circles due to the oral myths of the Himba people indigent to the region that believed the strange spots of land where grass refused to grow was caused by their gods of whom stepped foot on the land, and the circles are evidence of their footprints. The true cause for the formation of the circles has been at the center of debates and controversy for roughly over a century, with researchers from all different backgrounds positing their own theories as to the formation of the fairy circles while also working to discredit the work of others given the strange nature of the circles. The first widely discussed theory surrounded the native species of termites after a researcher concluded that the circles were caused by termite nests inside the region digging small caverns to serve as miniature aquifers that would kill any grass above them. This theory was then disproven after the measuring of the circles showed that their formation was equidistant of each other, a behavior that the termites and newly formed termite nests would not have displayed over such vast distances. The second widely supported theory came as recent as 2013, when researchers found evidence as they found correlating evidence that fairy circles were centered at areas with poor soil nutrition and less precipitation. However, this find would not explain the perfect circle designs that came about from these competitive natures. Although some have argued an explanation that fits both answers, others have noticed other strange causes of the arid formations and led to theories widely debated and deemed too controversial to support. Some researchers claim that the fairy circles have been measured to have heightened traces of radioactivity, but that their artificial formation might be evidence of deliberate radiation of some kind. Others have claimed that the fairy circles are evidence of far more supernatural origins and give credence to the native Bushmen in the region as to their rightful ownership of the land. To this day, no definitive answer has been accepted and no correlating evidence has been proven to be the causation of the fairy circles whatsoever. Our world is rife with secrets and mysteries. The more we learn about nature of land and sea and everything in between, we also learn that we don't know much about the world. From amazing creatures to man-made buildings that leave us in awe in the present day, there is still so much that we are trying to figure out and understand about our history. So today we'll be taking a look at 3 mysterious and ancient discoveries. 13 mysterious mummies discovered in Egyptian well. Ancient Egyptians were known for the incredible care, craftsmanship, and wealth that they invested in the burial of their rulers. However, not all residents of Egypt were quite so elaborate in the locations of final resting places. Recently, 13 ancient coffins were discovered stacked inside a burial well in the ancient necropolis of Saqqara. Although they have not yet been opened to discover who might lay inside, the 2,500-year-old wooden coffins are so well preserved that their intricately painted, multicolored designs are still visible. They also still retain their original seals, indicating that grave robbers or weather has likely left the contents of the coffins entirely undisturbed. Saqqara is an expansive desert necropolis and pyramid complex that borders the first Egyptian capital of Memphis and is the site of many ancient burial locations, including the famous step tomb, which is the oldest complete stone building complex known in history, as well as a number of other mastaba tombs, several of which belong to pharaohs. Although these coffins were not found in a magnificent pyramid, their incredibly well-preserved state will provide valuable information about the lives and fortunes of those who were not wealthy enough to secure such a lavish final resting place. The burial well in which the discovery was made descended 40 feet into the ground, with the coffins stacked on top of one another. Archaeologists hope that as they excavate the site further, they will find even more pristine preserved coffins buried in niches lining the well. During the time that the inhabitants of these coffins would have been alive, Egypt was under Persian rule as part of the Persian Empire, who invested largely in revitalizing the tumultuous empire, strengthening the economy and allowing the country to once again begin to thrive. These efforts also likely helped to preserve some aspects of Egyptian culture that might have otherwise been lost to war and upheaval. Hopefully these finds can give us a glimpse into what life was like under Persian rule. Because of the large number of pharaohs and prominent citizens of the early first, and as well as animals and other human remains, finds in this region are carefully excavated and studied for the valuable information that they may contain regarding ancient Egyptian life and civilization, and these carefully preserved coffins are sure to be a treasure trove of information. It seems that the discoveries made about ancient Egypt are never-ending, and that we will be uncovering incredible wonders for years to come. We do discover so that we can begin to understand that amazing empire that dominated the Nile River Valley for so long. Young female hunter uncovered. Archaeologists yet again uncovered a skeleton. This time they realized they had found the bones of a 9,000-year-old young woman who looked like a big game hunter. Perhaps this meant that hunter-gatherer women were more common than previously thought, and could bring down even larger animals like the vizuna and deer. However, at first researchers thought the skeleton was surrounded with projectile points and stone tools. Yet once they did more research, they realized that the bones were lighter than a typical man and that the proteins in the skeleton's dental enamel confirmed that the bones were of a woman, aged between 17 and 19 years old. This was yet another confirmation that proved that female participation in big game hunting was more normal than first thought. After looking at the records of about 429 burials across the Americas around the late Pleistocene and early Holocene epochs, the team identified 27 people buried with such big game hunting tools. So where did the concept of man the hunter come from? Perhaps it first came from the studies of a few hunter-gatherer societies where the men usually hunted big animals while the women gathered more fruits and plant foods. As a result, many scholars thought that this division between hunters and gatherers according to gender was universal. However, This uncovered female skeleton alone is changing the tide and challenging our most ingrained gender norms 9,000 years later. Dinosaur fossil of a titanosaur may belong to the largest land animal ever. When you think of a large dinosaur, you might immediately think of the Tyrannosaurus rex with its large body and sharp teeth, perfect for being at the very top of the food chain. However, there might be an even larger land animal. In the region of Patagonia in Argentina, rich with awe-inspiring vistas and fossils, there are many deposits of bones that have been unearthed to reveal the existence of huge dinosaurs that once lumbered around the river deltas. Among smaller findings, paleontologists spent years since 2015 carefully excavating what they believe to be the vertebrae and pelvic bones of a mysterious giant sauropod. Sauropods are dinosaurs that characteristically have long necks and long tails that walk on all fours and eat plants. Even though researchers have not unearthed the entire skeleton, they already have reason to believe that this might be the largest animal to ever set foot on Earth. These fossils were first found in a rock formation called the Candelarios Formation. It came to be when sediment settled in the area from a river floodplain during the Upper Cretaceous period from over 98 million years ago. With rock that old, careful excavation becomes difficult. Because paleontologists do not want to risk breaking the bones in any way, they painstakingly brush away at the rock. Even though most of it still has not been excavated, the team already has uncovered 27 vertebrae from the sauropod's tail along with pelvic and pectoral girdle parts. However, it is already visually apparent that the dinosaur is no ordinary fossil. According to Dr. Alejandro Otero, the bones are between 10 and 20% bigger than the fossils of many previous large dinosaurs found. Now they know it's a titanosaur, which is a type of sauropod. A titanosaur is a sauropod that has been found in fossil beds all over the world, but none as large have been found as in Patagonia. For instance, the Argentinosaurus reached a staggering weight of more than 110 tons, with a height of 20 meters and was 40 meters in length. The newly discovered fossil seems to tower above them all. It's also suggested to be more than 120 feet long. However, researchers can't be sure of the weight until the load-bearing bones, such as the femur and the humerus, are unearthed. Yet for as big as the sauropod could possibly be, it still fails to stand up to the largest animal in our planet that still exists with us today. Except it's not on land. It's the blue whale that reigns supreme, reaching lengths as long as 30 meters and weighing upwards of 200 tons. It seems that only time will tell as paleontologists continue to work on unearthing this giant once-walking mystery to understand the greatness of this animal. But what do you make of these 3 recent discoveries? Report has just detailed that multiple sailors have been injured. The story reports that a naval submarine struck a mystery object while in the Indigo Pacific region. The submarine that was hit was the USS Connecticut, a multi-billion-dollar attack submarine. This happened on Tuesday, with officials saying that no life-threatening injuries had occurred, with the Navy saying that they can't confirm what it was that they struck. Interestingly, one Navy official who said they would give an interview as long as they were kept anonymous detailed that there were no areas around them in which they could have come into contact with, further saying that there was no landmass within the submarine's path. This comment caught many people's attention and led to some suggesting that the submarine may have hit another high-tech sub, or perhaps something a bit more mysterious. Captain Bill Clinton said the following about the incident: the Seawolf-class fast-attack submarine USS Connecticut, SSN-22, struck an object while submerged on the afternoon of October 2nd, while operating in international waters in the Indo-Pacific region. The safety of the crew remains the Navy's top priority. There's no life-threatening injuries. The submarine remains in a safe and stable condition. U.S. Connecticut's nuclear propulsion plant and spaces were not affected and remain fully operational. The extent of damage to the remainder of the submarine is being assessed. The U.S. Navy has not requested any assistance. The incident will be investigated. End quote. Although no serious injuries have been reported, Navy officials did say that 11 sailors were hurt during the incident, saying that many of them needed their injuries looked at. Officials have noted that things like this don't happen very often. In fact, they noted that the last time a U.S. submarine struck an underwater object was back in 2005, and this was when the USS San Francisco struck an underwater mountain. However, as mentioned by one of the naval officers on board, there was nothing in the path of the USS Connecticut. Interestingly, another Navy official said there's no evidence that the submarine struck another sub, and said that the incident was not hostile in nature, although they said the incident is being investigated. As of right now, it's being labeled as somewhat of a mystery. The sailors described their injuries as being deep bruises, cuts, and bumps. Due to the nature of the incident, many who read the story were quick to put forward their own theories for what the strange object could have been, saying that the fact it remained a mystery luckily means that it was an unknown object. It's interesting that the Navy said it wasn't an underwater llamas, and that it wasn't another submarine. This has caught the interest of many people, and some have said that the submarine could have come into contact with a USO. A USO is an unidentified submerged object, and it's something that's been linked to the military for some time now. For years, military officials have reported that they've encountered strange objects while out in the ocean, saying that many times these objects have seen entering and exiting the oceans at high speeds, and many times the Navy has investigated these claims, but never seemed to be able to find an answer. Many of these reports have been released through declassified networks, giving us a glimpse into some of the things that Navy officials encounter. These unidentified submerged objects have also been heavily featured in the news, with outlets noting that naval ships have been buzzed by mysterious flying crafts, only for them to fly into the water and stay submerged for several hours. What's interesting about this is that we have documented proof of these things showing interest in large naval ships, and also they've appeared on radar. These large underwater objects, which have been described as being cylinder or shaped like a disc, have been seen traveling at hundreds of knots. In fact, when many of these reports came to the surface, previous Navy officers came forward with their encounters, saying that they have the ability to keep up with the fastest ships or submarines, and that a few people have actually seen these things fly out of the water without making a disturbance. A few people have said that these underwater crafts could be the same thing as what people are seeing in the sky, and that they just happen to come from our oceans. This theory has gained more attention in recent years after sailors and other military officials have started to open up about their encounters, and the fact that they're being reported as being similar in shape to mysterious flying crafts could also back up this theory. Radar technicians have also come forward with their stories about these things, and said that officials have told them not to keep data on them, and that when they do track them, they've been given strict instructions to keep the evidence hidden. In fact, one worker said that one of these strange objects suddenly shot up from below them, and that they had been tracking it for several minutes, saying that it was getting really close and then flying around them. The worker then said that after chasing the submarine, it suddenly submerged itself and wasn't seen for the rest of the day. This doesn't mean that this is what the USS Connecticut encountered, but the fact that they said it wasn't an underwater mountain or another submarine has led to some looking at other possibilities. But what's interesting is that it's not the general public who have detailed these strange underwater objects. It's the Navy officials who spend large amounts of time on the water, leaving some to say that these are the best people to listen to because they have the most experience around water. As of right now, the Navy has said that they're going to investigate the strange encounter. So what do you make of this mysterious report? And what do you think the Navy encountered? Paranormal stories have become increasingly popular over the years. Usually they are centered around the life of someone who has experienced or encountered something that can provide an explanation for something unexplainable. So today, we'll be taking a look at 3 mysterious individuals who have lived unique and interesting lives with stories to share. Tesla's UFO and anti-gravity technology. Theorists have often cited Tesla as being the father of strange science fiction technologies given his incredible track record of developing emerging technologies. However, it appears that one such conspiracy theory surrounding Nikola Tesla and unidentified flying objects seems to have entered plausibility with the recent discovery made by Rare Earth of a patent that describes a flying machine that looks similar to modern-day interpretations of flying saucers. The patent includes detailed information such as the use of what can only be described as flat-screen televisions on the inside of the craft to allow the pilots to utilize a 360-degree view inside a cockpit that contained no windows for outside viewing. This would be accomplished with the use of cameras placed all around the flying saucer as well as a bunch of other sensitive equipment capable of gathering data to be used by although the legitimacy of the patent has still been put into question and is debated to this day. If the patent is genuine in its nature, it could point evidence to secret government projects that have been in the works since the early 1900s. Gil Perez. Gil Perez, also known as the 1593 transported soldier, is a well-known Mexican folk legend regarding teleportation. In October 1593, Gil Perez was a Spanish soldier guarding the Palacio del Gobernador in Manila, now known as the Philippines, when he leaned against a wall, closed his eyes because he began to feel dizzy and exhausted, and once he reopened them, he was outside Plaza Mayo, now known as Zocalo, Mexico City, mysteriously teleporting over 8,800 miles. The day before the alleged teleportation, on the 23rd of October 1593, the Governor Gomez Perez Dasmariñas was assassinated by his own Chinese rowers while attempting to capture new territory in the Philippines. At the time, parts of the Philippines were under the control of the Spanish. Mexico City was also part of the Spanish Empire. And at the time Perez arrived, news of the governor's assassination had not yet reached Mexico. Unsure of how to react, Perez continued to do his guarding duties. Local guards discovered the teleported soldier, and as he was not in the correct uniform, he was arrested and questioned. He was brought to the Viceroy of New Spain, Luis de Velasco, as it was his palace that Perez teleported to, who was reportedly pleased with the soldier's explanation, while religious officials were not as quick to accept it. As Perez's story about the assassination and teleportation could not be confirmed, he was charged with desertion and witchcraft and was jailed. He was sent to Santo Domingo to be imprisoned. 2 months later, a ship from Manila with passengers carrying the news of the governor's assassination arrived in Mexico City. Perez was recalled to Mexico after the ship's arrival confirmed his story. Some of the passengers on the ship recognized Perez, and he was freed and returned to his garrison in Manila. A lot of this remains a folk legend, with facts that are unable to be verified. The name Gil Perez cannot be confirmed through primary sources. However, there are records of a nameless soldier detained for witchcraft around the time of the governor's assassination, and this soldier was released several months later. Other accounts of the teleportation have been recorded. One in 1609 by a Spanish soldier called Antonio de Morgue and another in 1698 by Gaspar de San Agustin, a Spanish clergyman and historian. Mother Shipton's real name was Ursula Sunthil. She would later become known as Mother as a result of being the oldest woman in her village. She was born in 1488, but little is known about her childhood or her parentage. Legend has it that she was born during a violent thunderstorm in a cave in Knaresborough. It was said her mother was just 15 years old and refused to name the father of her child, despite being dragged before the local magistrate. Shipton was raised in the cave for 2 years before she was taken in by a local family, and her mother was sent to a nunnery. Shipton never saw her mother again. Unfortunately, Shipton was reputed to be hideously ugly, with a large and crooked nose, a bent back and twisted legs. She was said to look like a witch and cruelly nicknamed Hagface. When she met and married her husband, Toby Shipton, it was even rumored that she had bewitched him to fall in love with her. The constant cruelty that Shipton faced saw her retreat back to the cave she was born and first raised in, where she lived a lonely life and set up her business telling fortunes and predicting the future. Her premonitions grew more and more ambitious as her confidence grew, and soon she was known as the Nez Prophets. Her prophecies foretold the fates of several rulers, the invention of iron ships, the defeat of the Spanish Armada, and even the Great Fire of London. According to one of Samuel Pepys, a famous prophetic verse that has been attributed to Shipton goes like so: "The world to an end shall come in 1881. Shipton's prophecies had become so revered that in 1881, more than a century after her death, many did prepare for the apocalypse. It is said that word of Shipton even reached Henry VIII, who in a letter to the Duke of Norfolk, Thomas Howard, mentioned a witch of York. It cannot be confirmed that this witch was Shipton, however, Cardinal Thomas Wolsey, who at one point was a trusted ally of Henry VIII on several occasions, openly referred to Shipton. He was unhappy with one of Shipton's premonitions. When this cow rideth the bull, the priest, beware thy skull. He interpreted the cow in the premonition as Amber Lynn, and the skull as the threat she brought of breaking England's relationship with the Catholic Church. Wolsey grew so frustrated with Shipton that he threatened if he ever visited York, he would have her burnt on the stake for witchcraft. It is worth noting that many struggle to verify Shipton's prophecies. Her prophecy relating to the end of the world in 1881 was said to not appear in print until well after her death in 1862, and is believed to actually be the work of Victorian editor Charles Hindley. The last few years have seen a host of scientific discoveries, and many of these more exciting cases have been within the field of archaeology. The field unravels the history and cultural practices of human civilization, telling us all about the past and giving us insights into the making of modern society. So today we'll be taking a look at these 3 archaeological discoveries. Magical abilities of the Bosnian pyramids. The Earth might be tiny compared to other planets, but it for sure has a lot of variety. One mysterious structure that has caused many to ask questions is that of the pyramids of Bosnia. The pyramids of Giza are truly impressive, but the giant pyramids of Bosnia are just as impressive. One of the local archaeologists in Bosnia made a claim related to the Bosnian pyramids. He believes they are at least 30,000 years old, which is 20,000 years earlier than what our history taught us. The Bosnian pyramids are a massive complex of 5 different pyramids. The entire complex can be found near a small town 30 kilometers northwest of Sarajevo in Bosnia. Some of the scientists refuse to even look at them, and they claim that the archaeologist is just trying to secure funding and get more tourists in Bosnia. Not all of the scientists refuse to know more. Organic fossils have been found inside the chambers that have been excavated. The find suggests that the pyramids are approximately 30,000 years old. This is surprising considering we have been taught that the ancient structures were not nearly as old as this. Just like the Egyptian pyramids, the pyramids of Bosnia also orient to the cosmic north. What makes the pyramids of Bosnia so special is the fact they are 15 times more accurate than the Pyramid of Giza. The top of each pyramid, dragon, sun, and moon, also forms a flawlessly perfect equilateral triangle. Another interesting discovery is that researchers have detected and measured an energy beam that gets released from the top of the Bosnian pyramid. What surprised the researchers is that when the distances increase, the energy beam does not become weaker. Incredibly, it actually becomes stronger and more intense. Tests have been carried out, and it was reported that the energy beam has a diameter of between 5 and 9 meters. Some archaeologists have called the pyramid an energy machine. The underground chambers of the pyramids seem to feature ionization levels that are much higher than the outside. Some even suggest that the pyramid and the energy it gives off have different healing properties. Have researchers found a 300-million-year-old screw embedded into rock? Finding fossilized remains in ancient rock is one thing, but how about a 100-million-year-old screw that isn't even from this planet? A Russian team sent to investigate a meteorite crater in the region of Kalaga, western Russia, only expected to find space rock and rubble, but instead found something even more extraterrestrial. Near to the crater hole, the team happened upon a rock dislodged and partially fragmented by the impact of the nearby meteorite. What they found in there was a very strange object, the curiousness of which needed further scientific analysis to confirm exactly what they had found. A paleontological analysis was performed, and it was confirmed that in the center of the rock itself was a screw, not placed there by human design, but rather strongly embedded within, suggesting it had fallen to the ground at some point only to be encased over time. Tests showed that the iron atoms of the screw and silicon rock atoms spread and fused together, confirming that the screw and rock had been in each other's company for a significant time. It was also concluded that the screw was not the result of natural process, but indeed artificially fashioned. What was even more strange, however, was what geologists said about the age of the rock. Radiocarbon dating placed it to be over 30 years old. 300 million years old. Needless to say, this was a long time before any humans or their tools, for that matter, had ever been on this planet. So how did it get there? Nigel Watson, an expert of the extraterrestrial, believes this could be ancient evidence of aliens visiting Earth a long time ago, with the screw being a part of their landing craft on this planet. This screw could actually be part of many reports that talk of spheres, toothed wheels, manufactured bots and footprints embedded in rocks and stones hundreds of millions of years old. Government scientists insist that this is actually the result of a natural formation, even perhaps being an ancient marine animal that bears some similarity in its looks. However, with this particular rock formation secured in a research facility beyond independent geological and archaeological specialists, it is clear that we will not be getting to the truth of the matter anytime soon. The Roman dodecahedrons are first mystery dates back to the Romans. It's a hollow object with 12 equally sized faces. The first Roman dodecahedron was found more than 200 years ago, and since then around 100 more have been unearthed around what was the Roman Empire. Some of these locations include that of Wales, Hungary, Spain, Italy, Germany, and France, to name a few. But the 12 faces are about the only uniform thing about the Roman dodecahedrons. Some are made of bronze while others are made of stone, and their size has varied from a golf ball to bigger than a football. In fact, one of the only things that experts are sure of when it comes to these mysterious objects is that they were extremely valuable. Many of the Roman dodecahedrons were made from metal, an expensive and difficult material to craft in Roman times, and were discovered in treasure hoards alongside other precious items such as coins. Beside their value, there hasn't been much agreement from experts into the purpose of the Roman dodecahedrons. Evidence is scarce. None were found with any inscriptions, nor is there any mention of the objects in contemporary documents. Experts having examined the Roman dodecahedrons have put forward uses of the objects spanning from knitting to weaponry. Granted, some theories of the Roman dodecahedrons' use have proved more feasible than others. For example, the idea that they might have been used as weapons has been dismissed by many experts. The usual heavy and robust lead balls the Romans favored firing from their slings in wartime sharply contrast to the light and delicate Roman dodecahedrons. However, the link between Roman dodecahedrons and weaponry cannot be completely dismissed. The different locations in which these artifacts were unearthed could link to war zones in the Roman Empire. And just because the objects might not have been used as weapons doesn't mean they weren't still in use in a military context. Hence, some experts have proposed the Roman dodecahedrons could have been used as a range-measuring object on the battlefield. This also explains why so many of these artifacts varied in size and shape. The differentiation of the objects would allow for different ranges to be measured. However, before celebrating that the mystery has been solved, some experts have questioned why the Roman dodecahedrons would then have no markings or inscriptions on them if they were being used as a military mathematical instrument. Another line of thinking is that the Roman artifacts might have held a mystical power for the Romans. One was found in a grave belonging to a wealthy woman in the Netherlands, mounted onto a staff. Its placement suggests that it was seen as giving some magical power to the owner. Another related line of thinking is that the 12 sides of the Roman dodecahedrons might be a reference to Plato's statement. This was that a dodecahedron shape was used for embroidering the constellations on the whole heaven and the astrological zodiac. Therefore, some experts have proposed that the Roman dodecahedrons might have been used as astronomic measuring instruments to determine when to prepare the grain. If the Roman artifacts were held in such high esteem by the Romans, it would explain why so many show so little signs of wear and tear. Then again, there is no contemporary document to support this claim. It's important to come to one definitive conclusion of the purpose of the Roman dodecahedrons. The objects continue to baffle experts, but what can be agreed by all is the uniqueness of this Roman treasure. In our modern age, a genuine, mind-blowing discovery is seemingly hard to come by. Our ever-expanding knowledge of our planet and the universe means that we are slowly chipping away at the mountain of questions we have about this plane of existence. But every now and then, something truly baffling rears its head, something that throws a wrench in the works of everything we thought we knew. These rare discoveries can be found in the strangest of as well as the scientific community. So today, we'll be taking a look at 3 mysterious and incredibly interesting discoveries. Messier 82 supernova explosion. Some humans might be surprised to discover that our galaxy is not the biggest or even the brightest galaxy. In fact, Messier 82, also known as Cigar Galaxy, is a starburst galaxy about 12 million light-years away from our own Milky Way that produces stars at a rate 33 times the rate of star formations in the Milky Way. It is about 5 times brighter with a center over 100 times brighter our home galaxy. Because it is a high-energy starburst galaxy, it is prone to the collapse of young but still enormous stars which form the astronomical phenomenon known as a supernova. In 2014, the Messier 82 galaxy experienced a Type 1a supernova, which was recorded by the Hubble Space Telescope and was logged as the closest supernova explosion to Earth in at least 40 years. The explosion was the brightest point in the entire galaxy, and at the peak of the explosion could even be seen with the naked eye or amateur telescope. Amazingly, the event was discovered by chance as a professor at University College London was training several undergraduate students to use a small telescope and looked at Messier 82 because it was one of the only regions not covered by London's dense clouds that day. Satellite logs were recovered and the progress of the explosion could be tracked. The explosion took place over the course of 2 weeks, and the entire cycle of the eruption was recorded via telescopic imaging, so that researchers could use the images to increase their understanding of the process of a supernova. As there had not yet been such a close occurrence of a supernova since the development of high-resolution telescopes and more advanced technology, the supernova in Messier 82 is currently the best documented and studied supernova in history due to its proximity to Earth. The study of this supernova and other similar Type 1a supernovae in general allow astronomers to estimate the relative cosmology of the universe, as well as to understand the mechanisms behind the occurrences of these massive astronomical explosions. Close inspection of the supernova of Messier 82 has given credence to several popular theories regarding the conditions of formation and the structure of progenitor stars prior to explosion. Scientists hope that another such close-range example will arrive to provide empirical support for the theories and observations that Messier 82 began and propagated. China has done human testing to create biologically enhanced supersoldiers. Enhanced supersoldiers are the themes of novels, movies, and TV. However, this could be a reality in the not-so-distant future. China has reportedly already done human testing to create biologically enhanced supersoldiers. According to U.S. intelligence officials, China has carried out testing on members of the People's Liberation Army. In a paper published by the Jamestown Foundation in October 2019, China's military biotech ambitions were examined. The paper, quoting a 2015 article in PLA Daily, stated that Chinese military scientists and strategists have consistently emphasized that biotechnology could become the new strategic commanding heights of the future revolution in military affairs. CRISPR gene editing technology is at the forefront of their strategy. According to this paper, CRISPR technology is in the pipeline of multiple pharmaceutical companies for treating genetic diseases and cancer. It has also multiple uses in agriculture. However, there are multiple ethical questions that surround the use of this technology. When combined with other technological advances, genetic editing could pave the way for the creation of a super soldier. It is worth noting that in most countries this will not happen in the near future, as it is deemed unethical to use genetic editing in this way, and it is banned by numerous governing bodies. Tampering with DNA could have unforeseen consequences. It is deemed unethical to boost the performance of a healthy human via gene editing. The first humans that had been genetically modified using CRISPR were born in China. A professor in the Department of Biology of the Southern University of Science and Technology in Shenzhen, China claimed to have used CRISPR to delete CCR5 from human embryos, making them immune to HIV, some of which were later used to create pregnancies. In China, He was found guilty of conducting illegal medical practices and sentenced to 3 years in prison, as he had deliberately violated national regulations on biomedical research and medical ethics. China is rapidly investing in its own biotech landscape, and a lot of CRISPR-Cas9 developments in the global pharmaceutical arena have originated in the country. This could give ample access for the government to test this technology in areas outside of pharmaceutical or agricultural applications. John Ratcliffe, a Republican former member of Congress from Texas and the Director of National Intelligence, stated, "There are no ethical boundaries to Beijing's pursuit of power." Other technologies that could be used to enhance soldiers include nanotech, brain-machine interfaces, bionics, and exoskeletons, which raise fewer ethical questions than genetic modifications. But for now, an enhanced super soldier is likely to stay a hypothetical possibility for now, and gene editing will remain in the area of pharmaceuticals and agriculture. The Book of Soiga in the early 16th century, an unknown author wrote a written work about demonology. This treatise, entirely written in Latin, would eventually be known as the Mysterious Book of Soiga, otherwise known as Alderia. No one would have known anything about the book if it wasn't for an Englishman named John Dee. He was an accomplished mathematician, philosopher, and astronomer, who also worked alongside the Queen of England Elizabeth I. Once he got a hold on the book nearly half a millennium ago, he dedicated his entire life to unlock its mysteries. The first part of the book was easy for Dee, who could easily read Latin. Within it, he discovered passages about the wildest spells, magical formulas and conjurations, and structures involving angels and demons. Yet it was the last part of the book that really tripped him up. 36 pages of some cryptic tables containing Latin letters. He knew that it must have been a code, potentially with a message. With that realization, he was determined to uncover it, no matter how far his methods could reach. He consulted his close friend named Edward Kelly, who was an occultist and a spirit medium. Heavily involved in the supernatural and mystical, he immediately set to work with Dee. Instead of trying to spend hours closely interpreting the Latin characters, they instead summoned an archangel, or one of the highest-ranked angels. As the angel named Uriel was present, the two friends asked him about the meaning of the final part of the book. Usually known as the Angel of Wisdom, Uriel spoke his words through Kelly's mouth. Yet his answer only brought forth more questions, as well as a haunting omen. He said that the book came forth as soon as Adam entered the Garden of Eden, and that it could only be understood by Archangel Michael, the leader of the army of God against forces of evil. Even more chilling was Uriel's statement that the Book of Sawyer was cursed. If one were to uncover the meaning behind the tables and their codes, they would surely pass away 2.5 years later. As time passed with the fate lingering in the air, Dee was never able to find out the meaning. The book even disappeared in the late 1610s, thought to be destroyed or forever lost. It wasn't until 1994 when a copy of the book was discovered in the British Library in London among a heap of other ancient tomes. For 100 years after Dee's passing, the book had finally resurfaced. It was found by none other than an American historian and professor named Deborah Harkness, who studied John Dee and wrote her PhD thesis on his life's work. As it turns out, there was a second copy in the Bodleian Library at Oxford. Upon its momentous discovery, many occult fans and cryptographers rushed back to figure out the final part. After many years of deciphering, one man by the name of Jim Reeds found the answer in 2006. As both a historian and cryptographer, he created an algorithm for understanding the tables, which revealed lists of magical incantations, astrological words, and even more angel and demon names. Did he pass away in 2.5 years? As a matter of fact, he is still alive today, 15 years later. But whether the curse remains true, we will never know. Reed had never managed to interpret the tables, as the curse says its victim must do. Perhaps within the tables, a secret and mysterious message still lays out. We live in a world of mystery. There are secrets everywhere we look. Sometimes they thrill us, sometimes they terrify us. But one thing is for certain, we long to know the answers to them. Luckily, discoveries are made every day, and they often tell us more about ourselves, our history, our ideologies, and our past. But sometimes, the discoveries only drive us deeper into a state of bewilderment. So today, we'll be taking a look at 3 unusual and extraordinary discoveries. The temple to Thor and Odin has been unearthed in Norway. The Viking Age has always been shrouded in intrigue and mystery. History has told legends about them, their culture, their religion, their brutality. We've all heard of their many conquests and their hedonistic persuasions. Perhaps these legends are true, perhaps almost all of them are false, but there is no denying the importance of Nordic mythology and religion in Viking culture. In western Norway, archaeologists have found a site of a Viking-era settlement dating to 1,200 years ago. Archaeologists have found evidence of longhouses that the Vikings lived in. Perhaps they cooked their food and raised their families in these longhouses. Maybe they taught their children how to fight and survive. The houses themselves are a noteworthy discovery. However, the most astonishing discovery made in the area was that of a pagan temple. By analyzing post-hole placement and the arrangement of other artifacts, the archaeological team determined that this particular longhouse was made for the express purpose of worship. Soren Dynov, a museum architect who helped lead the excavation, said, "I know of no other Scandinavian buildings in which the house construction is as clear as it is here. Of course, this is a magnificent archaeological find in its own right. This is more important than other findings. Temples and houses of worship are incredibly rare in Scandinavia. So experts see this as a key find for historians. But why are large Viking temples so rare? Before interaction with South European Christians in the 6th century, Viking religious ceremonies were much more modest. It wasn't the custom of Vikings to build large, vaulted temples for religious purposes. However, after seeing the large, intricate Christian churches of the time, some Viking groups followed suit and designed large worship houses of their own. Experts believe that this particular temple was built for the worship of Odin, Thor, Freyr, and other gods of the Norse religion. Later excavations have uncovered cooking pits and animal bones, which experts believe were used to cook meat for the gods to consume, represented by figurines. We know that the Vikings prepared food for the gods, but other than that, what did worship entail? Dynov said that worshippers would have enjoyed a feast, symbolically eating with the gods. He said that Viking worship in the temple would have been a good time, filled with eating and drinking. It's likely that this temple was also a place for blood sacrifices and rituals during the summer and winter solstices. Finding this new temple is not only a major archaeological find. It's offered new insights into the Viking way of life. Even so, there are still questions. What kinds of sacrifices did they do in the temple? Why aren't there more of them? What did these rituals look like? The only way to find out is to look, dig, and research. And hopefully one day our questions about the mystical lives of the Vikings will be fully answered. New cracks in the International Space Station. Humans have always been intrigued by the cosmos. Its beauty, wonder, and majesty have captured human eyes and imagination for millennia. It's no wonder why. Space is the ultimate manifest destiny. An unknown frontier full of awe and mystery, practically begging to be explored. In a relatively short period of time, humans have pushed past the atmosphere, landed on the moon, and even placed a rover on Mars. However, sometimes we forget how unforgiving space can truly be. The International Space Station is a multinational spacecraft designed for the purpose of housing humans, conducting research and performing science experiments. Though only the size of a large house, people have consistently lived on the International Space Station since 2000. Since the ISS was only supposed to last for 15 years, it has survived significantly past its projected expiration date. However, fissures or cracks have recently been discovered on the International Space Station's Zarya module. The Zarya module of the functional cargo block was the first module of the International Space Station to launch. Launching in 1998, it is the oldest piece of the ISS and is a Russian segment. Fortunately, the Zarya module is only used for storage, so these fissures aren't immediately threatening to any human life nor the rest of the ISS. However, Vladimir Solovyov, a Russian rocket engineer and specialist, has said that these fissures could begin to spread over time. These current fissures could spread across the rest of the Zarya module, eventually destroying it, rendering it completely useless within the next couple of years. And if that isn't bad enough, there is a deeper worry. If the Zarya module, the oldest part of the ISS, is beginning to show its age, it's likely that other parts of the ISS will start to do the same. If the cracks persist, the ISS may become uninhabitable, and the invaluable research taking place there may come to a halt. Of course, another ISS could be designed, built, and launched, but such a feat would require a massive international effort, not to mention billions of dollars. All we can really do now is hope that the International Space Station lasts as long as possible, so that our burning space questions can continue being answered. Bones in Whale Valley are still a mystery. Our world has no shortage of strange and intriguing biological findings. Surely the first person to find a dinosaur fossil was equal parts thrilled and petrified. Even now, witnessing a strange or unusual fossil finding can cause the most modern, educated head to spin. Whale Valley is one of the strangest and most mysterious located in the deserts of western Egypt. Whale Valley is a genuine graveyard littered with hundreds of fossils, some of which are entire skeletal structures. Under the careful watch of expert scientists, many of these skeletons have been fully exhumed and put together, each of them telling a fascinating story. Unbelievably well preserved, these bones seem to represent a species frozen in time, archaeocity, or ancient whales with legs. As hard as it may be to imagine, these bones belong to some kind of ancient semi-aquatic mammal that most closely resembles a whale with legs. The deserted area of Whale Valley is an archaeological site filled with evidence of a species at a very specific time in their evolution, answering some questions while inspiring so many more. These remains seem to suggest that whales were once land animals that slowly morphed into oceanic animals, eventually evolving into the mammals we know of today. 40 million years ago, long before humans ever roamed the earth, lived four-legged whales that traveled both in and out of water. They were large, long creatures with sharp teeth, suggesting a carnivorous diet, a far cry from the lumbering docile whales that fill our oceans today. They roamed the land and the sea, experiencing the world like few creatures get to do. But there are still so many unanswered questions. What necessitated the change from semi-aquatic to fully aquatic? What did the life of an amphibious, four-legged whale look like? Why is Western Egypt, once a vast sea, now a seemingly endless desert? The only way to find out is to keep looking, learning, and researching. We may never know all the details surrounding the skeletal structures preserved in Whale Valley, but if it can help us understand our world even a little bit better, it will all be worth it. But what do you make of these discoveries? Family moving into a new house, an abandoned house that has some mysterious activity, a creepy landscape. This Hollywood trio are the key ingredients to so many horrors, thrillers, and generally creepy movies, with many of our favorite classics having at least one. So whether they stay on your TV screen or you frequent one at Halloween, haunted houses aren't an unfamiliar concept. It's when we uncover stories of them in real life that it becomes frightening. So today, we will be looking at 3 creepy houses that saw cliché horror movie fiction turn into reality. Real estate agent discovers creepy doll in basement. Real estate agents, by the nature of their job, of course, look around plenty of houses. Whilst too many late-night films might put the rest of us off looking in the attic, the basement, or that one strange closet, real estate agents have seen it all. Or so they may think. So most are presumably much less tentative than the average Joe when checking a property out. At the start of this year, in February 2021, this would change for one real estate agent. The woman based in West Virginia, USA, shared some photos of a property to her Facebook page. This had been far from her average day at work as she stumbled across something she described as creepy in the house. The woman commented, I see lots of weird and funny things in houses all the time, but this is the first time I screamed out loud when opening the basement door. As the basement door swung open, a doll or statue of a boy sat looking ahead. The most notable question is, what is this doll? Is it simply decor or does it have supernatural value? Some have suggested that it may be a lawn ornament we may never truly find out. This woman in West Virginia is in good company when it comes to creepy dolls, with one woman in late 2020 finding a doll's head cemented into the wall. The doll peers out looking into the room, thoroughly frightening the new homeowners and their guests. Apparently, embedding parts of dolls into the walls of your home, particularly in the basement, was a popular trend in New York City and California in the late 1960s and early 70s. This bizarre trend was referred to as keeping cellar babies, though there were more than dolls tucked into the walls, with newspapers often making an appearance and very occasionally cash. Whilst cash would certainly make for a pleasant surprise one day, and newspapers act as a time capsule, the dolls bring the scare factor. These odd findings, no matter how frightening, usually have a fairly logical explanation, though that small instinct inside us that wants to scream at us to run and hide can oftentimes be pretty persuasive. Whether you believe in the paranormal or not, it can be shocking to find a doll, statue, or ornament seemingly out of place. Group finds body inside haunted house in Norway, South Carolina. Some people are drawn to the macabre, with the supernatural and paranormal being a point of intrigue as opposed to something to fear. Whilst ghost tours and videos online are all available to explore these dangerous interests, for some people this isn't as good as finding something that is undeniably the real thing. In January of 2021, a group of 8 young people wanted just that. They went looking for authenticity in their paranormal supernatural experiences. The group took off to an abandoned house in Norway, South Carolina, driving four-wheelers, seeking the thrills of ghosts, spirits, and a generally spooky atmosphere, though what they found was a much more tangible fright. The group made their way through the house, exploring and anticipating something that would frighten them, though they made it through with little to report until they reached the back garden. Sat on the back porch was a freezer, and a group looking for something frightening in the midst of exploring is of course going to cave into their own curiosity. An 18-year-old in the group opened the freezer, a decision that would scar him for life. As soon as the freezer opened, a pungent, putrid smell quickly filled the air. The young lad who made the discovery said he thought he saw socks and blue jeans, giving away that this rotting, disgusting smell was a dead Coriantly. One of the explorers stated, "As soon as the seal broke loose, it was just a horrifying smell. Something you won't forget." Exploring and investigating over, the group contacted local authorities who were able to confirm that this was a dead body in the freezer. No information has been released regarding the identity of the corpse, nor has a cause of death been shared with the public. Madison Childers, one member of the group who found the body, commented, "You couldn't tell it was a person because I think it had been there for months." As she described the scene to officials, she added, "There were maggots everywhere." Another individual at the scene expressed concern that this memory would traumatize and stick with them for life. As they said, "I heard that once you smell a human, you can't ever forget it. And I can still smell it right now." In an unbelievable twist of events, just 2 days after the group of 8 found the body and the authorities got involved, house burned down. As you would imagine, due to the timing of the fire, it was treated and considered as suspicious, leaving the public to speculate what else might have been hidden in the house and who was responsible. Remember to be careful when you go looking for something creepy. You never know just what you might find. The Stroud House. David Bissett is the owner of an old house, and where there is time and a history to a building, more often than not there are stories and rumors of the paranormal. Whether these are genuine ghost sightings or simply creaky floorboards and a leaky pipe, people are quick to assume the worst or the most exciting. His home, the Stroud House, is no exception, and the whispers of his home being haunted gained so much traction that he rents a suite of his home out on Airbnb. The Stroud House is missing some of those key details that make a great haunted house theory. There were no deaths in the house and no tragic mysteries or discoveries, though there was a death on the property in the back garden. The unusual happenings at the Stroud house aren't the typical easy-to-dismiss noises or creaks. No, instead shadows and figures are seen moving through the house. Anyone with a keen interest in the paranormal will know that shadow figures aren't good news. They play a key role in many religions and cultures, and while some depictions such as the Islamic jinn aren't inherently good nor evil, shadow people as a group are typically associated with malevolent forces. Inhabitants of the Stroud house tend to debunk this claim. They say that, yes, they do see these shadow figures, but their energy seems, quote, playful, not dangerous. Of course, no matter the experience, skeptics do try to explain scenarios and make sense of them. Some believe shadow people could be the result of sleep paralysis or a hallucination, while some believers in the paranormal have suggested that shadow figures are people from alternate timelines and universes that we can see occasionally in our peripheral vision for an unknown reason. The Stroud house was built in the 1940s by Reverend Isaac Thomas Stroud, known as Tommy, and his wife Esther. Though the death that could impact the haunting of the house was that of the Reverend himself. Tommy died whilst mowing the lawn in the Stroud house garden. Could a death on the property mean the Reverend's spirit still lingers? Following the couple's death, the home was left to their daughter Mildred and her husband, Reverend John Clinard Brooks. John passed away in 1990 and Mildred moved. Eventually, the home was passed on to David Bissett, the great-grandson of the original homeowners. Reverend Isaac Thomas Stroud and his wife Esther. Bissett and his family moved into the home on February 14, 1999, and they began to notice strange happenings around Easter of the same year. It started with small things, a light on, despite no one recalling leaving it on, then watching the light turn itself on with nobody near it at the time. Following this, footsteps have been heard, the shadow figure seen, sightings of orbs floating in the dining room. Pictures have fallen off walls. The daughters and possibly their dog have experienced random strange pinching and a haunting classic. The music box often randomly turns on and off. Bissett has said that none of this seems to be evil, just confusing and strange, though I know I wouldn't be rushing to book a stay in this Airbnb. Whether it is a tangible human committed crime or an unexplained haunted home, the world is full of terrifying, scary things. Those of us willing to seek out those frights could be named brave or daft. We'll let you decide. But what do you make of these discoveries? Yellowstone National Park is one of the most visited national parks in America, receiving over 3.8 million people in 2020, a 5% increase from 2019. Beneath the beautiful landscape, though, is a massive chamber, and it's this chamber that solved particular interest. Geologists and researchers have long been conducting tests around the area, ensuring that any activity is thoroughly investigated. The United States Geological Survey has been very open about what would happen if the supervolcano erupted, saying the following: if another large caldera-forming eruption were to occur at Yellowstone, its effects would be worldwide. Such a giant eruption would have regional effects such as falling ash and short-term changes to global climate. Those parts of the surrounding states of Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming that a closest telestorm would be affected by pyroclastic flows, while other places in the United States would be impacted by falling ash. The amount of ash would decrease with distance from the eruption site. Such eruptions usually form calderas, broad volcanic depressions created as the ground's surface collapses, as a result of withdrawal from partially molten rock below. Unfortunately, the chances of this sort of eruption at Yellowstone are exceedingly small in the next few thousand years. End quote. Although the United States Geological Survey says that an eruption is not due within the next few thousand years, they also admitted that you cannot predict when an eruption is going to happen, saying that you can't go by previous eruptions. The USGS said the following: Yellowstone has experienced 3 at 2.08, 1.3 in 0.6 million years ago. This comes out to an average of around 725,000 years between eruptions, but this is based on the average of just 2 numbers, which is meaningless. It's for this reason why some have kept a close eye on the data in order to see if there's been any changes. Even NASA has now got involved and said that the concept of a super eruption from supervolcanoes needs to be reevaluated. This comes after new research suggested that volcanic eruptions can still happen even without the presence of liquid magma. NASA said that supervolcano eruptions must be a high priority and must be studied extensively, saying that they're more of a threat to human life than that of an asteroid or a comet. This is according to Brian Wilcox of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Professor Martin Danzig and a team from Oregon State University studied Lake Tova, which is a large body of water that sits on top of a supervolcano. Researchers studying the lake have said that it's the largest lake in Indonesia and the largest volcanic lake in the world, and studying it has allowed them to learn a lot. For example, they revealed that the supervolcano below the lake erupted an estimated 69,000 to 77,000 years ago, noting that the explosion was so big that it created a climate-changing event felt around the world. This is due to the fact that the ejection of a large amount of volcanic ash causes a global darkness event, preventing the planet from sufficiently warming up and causing a global ice age. This appears to have been the case a mere 100,000 years ago when the Toba eruption occurred and nearly drove humanity to extinction. Prior to this event, there was an estimated 1 million human population. After the event took place, there were only 11,000 humans left, of which caused a massive bottleneck effect that allows us to see the time in which such an event took place. Additionally, this rapid death count occurred when the Toba supereruption caused a global blackout that lasted for more than 10 years. During this time, a massive ice age occurred and an atmospheric cooling event that lasted for another 1,000 years. Professor Danzig said the following about the study. Supervolcano eruptions can impact global climate to the point of tipping the Earth into a volcanic winter, which is an abnormally cold period that may result in widespread famine and population disruption. The professor and their team said that supervolcano eruptions happens once every 17,000 years, but as previously mentioned, this cannot be used as an exact number, as two events that would have happened close to one another would have been counted as one, and also like the United States Geological Survey said, you can't go by previous eruptions. NASA have said that after looking at all the data, one of the best ways to stop or help with a supervolcano eruption would be to cool down the volcano itself, saying that this could be done via heat transfer, with the figures showing that if you could remove around 35% of the heat inside the supervolcano, then an eruption would no longer be a threat. When this was first being discussed, it was suggested that officials could build a giant aqueduct above Yellowstone and simply increase the amount of water inside the Yellowstone system. However, Brian Wilcox of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory said this wasn't a very good idea. He said the following: people don't want their water spent that way. People are desperate for water all across the world. And so a major infrastructure project, where the only way the water is used is to cool down a supervolcano, would be very controversial. NASA then suggested drilling 6.2 miles of 10 kilometers down into the supervolcano and bringing down the pressure, noting that the water that would be used for this project could be used to generate electricity. NASA did say, though, that the project would cost over $3.46 billion, but said that it's one way that could possibly prevent a supervolcano eruption. Some people have voiced their concerns with this and said that it's one thing to experiment inside a lab, but when you start messing with Mother Nature, anything could go wrong, especially if it's never been done before. Many users echo the same concerns, with one person saying the following: and what's their plan B if something goes wrong? I'm not saying that nothing should be done, as I think it's important that we take this seriously. But what if a chain reaction goes off? What if we increase the chances of an eruption? Who's monitoring this? And whose fault is it if something goes wrong? Also testing it on Yellowstone, a supervolcano which is best known for being massive and having the ability to wipe out pretty much the entire United States, does seem like somewhat of a gamble. End quote. Mr. Wilcox did acknowledge this, saying the following: the most important thing with this is to do no harm. If you drill into the top of the magma chamber and try to call it from there, this would be very risky. This would make the cap over the magma chamber more brittle and prone to fracture. Yellowstone explodes roughly every 600,000 years, and it's around 600,000 years since it last exploded, which should be cause for us to sit up and take notice. End quote. Some scientists have spoken out about this and said that the amount of water you'd need in order to make a small dent would have to be around the size of one of the Great Lakes in America. For context, Lake Superior holds 3 quadrillion gallons of water. So what do you make of these announcements? And do you think that supervolcano will erupt within your lifetime? Soviet Union built 4 nuclear reactors in 1977. The fourth is primarily the one held in question and essentially responsible for engraving a deep irreversible mark in history and ultimately led to the downfall of said Soviet Union, and not to mention dramatically impacted lives including humans, wildlife, and nature. Although at one point in time, a nuclear power plant in Ukraine's city of Chernobyl presented no obvious outward harm. Anything nuclear-related always harnesses potential risk. Unfortunately, that risk would turn into a full-blown reality on April 26, 1986. They say time is healing, and although in some instances that rings true with the incident of Chernobyl, even with time, unfortunately, the city and neighboring regions still suffer the impacts that took place that day. Upon investigation, the disastrous accident occurred as a result of a test gone wrong. Workers were testing the cooling and electrical mechanisms of the 4th nuclear reactor, or Chernobyl 4 reactor as it was formally called. The objective was to see if in the event of a power shutdown, if the reactor could still be successfully called. Plans went entirely awry, as there was an unexpected and unanticipated power surge. Workers desperately tried to stifle the power surge in efforts to deactivate and shut it down, but it was too late. Another power surge within the reactor already had its gears in motion, causing explosions within the reactor's makeup, all the way to its nuclear center, which served to be the most detrimental of all. Once the nuclear core was exposed, radioactive material freely escaped, wreaking havoc into the atmosphere. It was chaos. As far as when things will get back to normal in Chernobyl, that is still a question that is relatively still up in the air. It's estimated that the area and neighboring regions were still being cleaned up efforts for many decades. Scientists have even gone to the extent of predicting that the region and neighboring regions deemed as exclusion zones will not be safe to inhabit for a bold and hefty 20,000 years. However, with that said, it's not to say that people are not currently inhabiting those regions. Some have returned to their old family homes to resume the farm life they once lived as children, before the catastrophe at Chernobyl. That primarily applies to the elderly. However, families who are fleeing crises of conflicting situations have also been attracted to the area, and this is due to the highly affordable land. In recent years, mysterious discoveries had been made in and around the exclusion zone, and one of these is the reports of mysterious flying crafts. People who worked in Chernobyl would report seeing mysterious flying crafts above the nuclear plant, noting that they looked nothing like traditional planes or helicopters and would hover above them motionless as if they were inspecting the area. They would do this for several minutes before making a quick exit. Interestingly, this was even documented by a few employees, but it's reported that officials brushed the sightings aside, with others saying that this often happens when mysterious crafts are sighted above nuclear plants. Interestingly, Mikhail Vyrotsky, who was working for the Radiation Control Department, said that on the same day as the disaster, he and several other colleagues would witness a mysterious craft hovering above reactor number 4, almost as if inspecting it. His story isn't very well known, but he details his encounter with UFOs. He said the following: "We saw a ball of fire, and it was slowly flying in the sky. I think the ball was 6 or 8 meters in diameter. Then we saw 2 rays of crimson light stretching towards the 4th unit. The object was some 300 meters from the reactor. The event lasted for around 3 minutes. The lights of the object went out and flew away in the northwestern direction." End quote. Incredibly, he goes on to detail that the radiation levels in the area dropped, going on to say the following: "The UFO brought the radiation levels down. The level decreased almost 4 times. This probably prevented a nuclear blast." End quote. This has caused some UFO researchers to suggest that the craft was actually trying to help us. Various military personnel have come forward and said that when tests are being carried out, it's not uncommon to see UFOs in the region, going on to say that it's almost like they're watching what we're doing. These crafts have also been seen close to things like missiles, and back in 1964, former U.S. Air Force Robert Jacobs was in charge of photo instruments. His mission was to film an Atlas rocket during his flight. When he heard liftoff, he started the cameras. He said he could see all 3 stages of the rocket. Thinking that everything was fine, he then took the counts of film to get them developed. He was then ordered to go to the office of one of the majors. There, he was told to sit down and listen carefully to what they were about to say. He turned on the film projector and showed him the launch. As the Atlas missile entered the frame, he was told that it was traveling between 11,000 and 14,000 miles per hour. However, the cameras then picked up a saucer-shaped graph that came into frame. Robert Jacobs said the following about the incident. It flew into the frame and shot a beam of light at the warhead. Remember, all this stuff is flying at several thousand miles an hour. This thing fires a beam of light at the warhead, hits it, fires another beam of light, then flies out the way it came in. The warhead then tumbles out of space. When the lights came on, Major Management said, "Were you guys messing around up there?" And I said, "No." He asked what that was, and I said, "I think we have a UFO." End quote. Another report from within the exclusion zones is that of apparitions. Those who have spent a long period of time within Chernobyl have often reported seeing mysterious figures in the corner of their eyes, only to notice that they vanish when they try to focus on them. In fact, explorers have often said that when one of these apparitions is close by, the level of radiation spikes on the Geiger counter. Others have said that around the building shadow people can often be sighted, with some theorists suggesting that these may be the people that lost their homes and that returned to the exclusion zone after their passing. Shadow people have long been reported by individuals across the planet, and interestingly, many of their stories match up with eyewitnesses describing humanoid black masses that have the ability to go through walls and interact with things around them. There's many who have said that this is an old phenomenon, and it's only been in recent years that people have started to open up about their encounters. It's not known what they are. Scientists have said that a likely answer is that of pareidolia, but believers have said these entities are definitely real, and that they're often seen around areas where there's been some type of tragedy. Another idea that's starting to gain traction is that these shadow people may actually be individuals who are having an outer body experience. Regardless of what you call them or what you think they are, sightings of them is still being reported in the modern day, with us no closer to understanding what or where these entities are coming from. There's many areas around Chernobyl that are out of bounds, but tours can be arranged if you want to see some of the nearby areas. Many have done this in order to explore what's been left, and one of the things you'll likely run into during your visit is that of children's dolls and children's toys, with them now being completely covered in the radioactive dust and soot. This has left the town with the appearance of being completely frozen in time. Same as on the day of the evacuation and a perfect recreation of the 1980s during the rule of the Soviet Union, with Soviet propaganda and toys of that era littered throughout the area. Something else that can be found within the exclusion zone is that of the giant claw. It was one of the machines that was used to help clean up the area shortly after the event. However, due to its high levels of radiation that's been left to rot, the claw is still very radioactive, and researchers have said that it can't be touched by those who visit the region. In fact, private guards have said that it's not a good idea to even get close to it, as it could cause harm to the human body. The average background radiation is around 0.16, and the claw measures in at over 39. To put that into perspective, 10 or higher could cause death within hours, which is why tour guides have told people to not go near it. A physicist at the University of Portsmouth said that by 2065 Chernobyl would have caused around 16,000 cases of thyroid cancer and 25,000 cases of other cancers. However, other researchers have said that the amount is much higher than this. So what do you make of these mysterious discoveries surrounding Chernobyl? The world is full of the very rare and unusual, from our own planet Earth to the very farthest reaches of the cosmos. Whether natural discoveries are being made or laboratory experiments are being carried out successfully, scientific innovation changes and evolves from day to day, leaving us in a constant state of wonder and awe. So today, we will be going over 3 recent discoveries that came about as a result of this innovation and what they might mean for the scientific community at large. The accident hints at unknown stars. When it comes to understanding the ins and outs of our cosmos and solar system, scientists will be the first to admit that we are not even close to knowing everything that there is to know. And a recent discovery has proven that even things that seemed fairly simple might be vastly more complex than we initially thought. Stars are categorized after rather rigid protocols based off their size, temperature, and brightness. However, a celestial body that has been dubbed the Accident has recently discovered that doesn't quite adhere to any of these characteristics. Initially categorized as a brown dwarf or a failed star, it appears totally unlike previously named brown stars and exhibits a strange spectrum of light and was only discovered by pure chance, as the name suggests. After further study of its properties, scientists concluded that the Accident is likely as old or nearly as old as the universe itself. A seriously impressive feat for the lifespan of a star. As a brown dwarf, the Accident is one of the smallest stars but is still sizably bigger than the largest planet in our solar system and formed from the top-down cloud collapse model that is typical of stars. Although they are too small to fuse hydrogen in their cores like larger stars, brown dwarfs fuse deuterium, which has a lower fusion temperature and pressure. This results in a smaller, cooler, and dimmer star that cools even further as they age. These types of brown dwarfs are discovered all the time. In fact, around 2,000 have been categorized so far in the Milky Way, but the Accident's unique and totally unexpected characteristics mean that it had been repeatedly overlooked in previous scans for brown dwarfs. Besides the strange spectrum of light, the Accident exhibits an odd pattern of thermal radiation and is only around 53 light-years away. This further underlines the notion that the Accident is something special and isn't like just any other of the brown dwarfs that have previously been located in the solar system. The discovery of a strange star that could date back to the creation of the universe opened up an interesting possibility for scientists concerned with discerning the content of the solar system. While we had taken it for granted that most stars are visible in some form or another, now scientists are forced to admit that doesn't necessarily mean that we have located all the types of stars out there. In the case of the Accident, the discovery highlights the very real possibility that there could be an entire category of impossibly ancient stars that have not been discovered yet simply because they look different from typical stars, and we didn't know what to look for when searching the skies. So, with the strange instance of the Accident in mind, scientists now look to the cosmos with a new frame of reference in order to begin scanning for more of these ancient stars. Only time will tell if their search turns up an entirely new subset of stars that has been lying hidden in plain sight for decades, or if the Accident truly is one of a kind. Captured images of Dogbone asteroid. When it comes to unraveling the secrets of the solar system, scientists must look to the composition of the objects traveling hundreds of light-years away to tell the stories of how the universe was formed and what forces are acting upon it. And new photographs of a strange-looking asteroid called Cleopatra make it seem as though the asteroid might have several clues about the inner workings of the solar system hidden within its strange shape, which is decidedly Dogbone-esque. Although Cleopatra, named after the ancient Egyptian queen, was actually discovered all the way back in 1880, its odd shape was only confirmed 10 years ago, and it wasn't until recent photographs captured by the European Southern Observatory's Very Large Telescope in Chile were revealed that scientists were truly able to get a closer look at the strange characteristics of Cleopatra. The asteroid, which is located over 125 million miles from Earth, in the main asteroid belt located between Mars and Jupiter, was finally able to be accurately measured and is over 250 kilometers wide and weighs over 3,300 trillion tons. These measurements, which are the most accurate that have been able to be obtained to date, have revealed that Cleopatra is almost a third lighter than previous calculations estimated. It completes one leisurely rotation every 5 hours, which is likely the fastest it could spin without its 2 larger lobes becoming separated. Cleopatra also has 2 moons orbiting it, dubbed Alex Helios and Cleo Selene, in a continuation of the Cleopatra theme, a phenomenon that is unique but not unheard of. The moons are appropriately named after Cleopatra's children, as they likely formed from rubble that detached from the main asteroid. Frank Marcus, a lead author of a study published in the journal Astronomy and Astrophysics, going over Cleopatra, says that asteroids are not inert bodies but complex mini-geological worlds. Cleopatra and other weird asteroids are natural laboratories to challenge our knowledge of the solar system and make us think outside the box. And scientists believe that the strange shape of Cleopatra will indeed make them think outside of the box as they try to determine whether the unique dog bone appearance can offer any clues as to the composition of the asteroid. Initial speculation centers around the idea that, due to its surprisingly lightweight, it is likely very loosely bound rubble of iron that formed due to an impact of larger asteroids billions of years ago. The study of such seemingly innocuous celestial objects helps scientists slowly form a complete understanding of our solar system, and each small bit of information such as this acts as yet another piece in their puzzle that is the incomprehensible mass of space. Firm raises $15 million to bring woolly mammoth back from extinction. It is common knowledge that once an animal becomes extinct, it is gone forever from the face of the earth. However, although it might seem that the woolly mammoth, which went extinct 10,000 years ago, is one of the very last candidates to be able to return to Earth, an American firm has set out to change that fact. There are those within the scientific community who have long believed that the worlds that it was within the realm of scientific possibility that the woolly mammoth could be brought back to life. But the funding and drive to see the project through had rarely been seriously discussed. Now, however, the bioscience and genetics company Colossal has put an astonishing $15 million behind the project. The company's founders are software entrepreneur Ben Lamb and Harvard Medical School geneticist George Church, and the pair hope that their research funding will create a mammoth-elephant hybrid. Church said that their goal with the project is to make a cold-resistant elephant, but it is going to look and behave like a mammoth. Not because we are trying to trick anybody, but because we want something that is functionally equivalent to the mammoth that will enjoy its time at -40 degrees Celsius and do all the things that elephants and mammoths do, in particular knocking down trees. The team hopes to begin by creating laboratory-grown embryos with mammoth DNA, which will be carried by a surrogate mother or in an artificial womb, estimating that they could have their first hybrid mammoth baby born within 6 years. To create the hybrid embryo, the researchers involved in the project will combine skin cells from the endangered Asian elephants and versatile stem cells containing mammoth DNA that is responsible for coating mammoth hair, fat layers, and other cold weather adaptations. These mammoth genomes have been recovered from preserved mammoth specimens found in the permafrost that are loosely related to the Asian elephants. Colossal has framed the project as an effort to help conserve the endangered Asian elephants and give them the characteristics required in order to be able to survive and continue to reproduce in their mammoth steppe of the Arctic, known for its vast stretches of frigid temperatures and seemingly uninhabitable land. They also hope that reintroducing the animals can help restore habitat degradation and combat the climate crisis. But there are those who are vehemently against the idea and believe that the idea of totally reinventing the tundra using mammoth-elephant hybrids is beyond the realm of possibility. Some people are hesitant about the potential ramifications behind introducing a several-ton species into an already fragile environment. While there are also those who believe that the possibilities to alter this experiment for other endangered species could combat the mass extinctions being seen all over the globe. However, even in the case that all goes well, the introduction of the first ever woolly mammoth-elephant hybrid isn't due for several more years, so there is still time to wait and ponder the effects. But what do you make of these recent discoveries and announcements? Beneath our feet are hidden fossils that hold the legacy of our ancient ancestry, and the cosmos above may hold the key to our continued existence or the origins of our demise. On a long enough timescale and in a universe so large and full of mystery, the only way to better understand where we are going to and from where we came is to explore and discover. So today we'll be taking a look at these 3 recent discoveries. Scientists find the world's oldest known forest, dating back 386 million years. Scientists have discovered fossil evidence of what may very well be the oldest forest ever to have spread its shade on Earth. In the quiet Catskill Mountains of New York State, researchers from Binghamton University have uncovered the 386-million-year-old fossilized root system of an ancient tree, the Archaeopteris, an ancestor of modern conifers. Prior to this discovery, the oldest known forest was at Gilboa, also located in New York State. This ancient forest is still a full 2 to 3 million years younger than the newly discovered forest in the Catskill Mountains. This primeval forest would not have harbored the same sounds as the typical forests we hike in today. Perhaps the creaking of boughs in the breeze, the swaying of tree trunks 5 feet in diameter would remind us of a silent walk in our local woods. But that's where the familiarity would end. The branches of these woods were barren of swinging primates and warbling birds in its canopy. Reaching 65 feet into the air would not have given shade even to dinosaurs who would not walk the earth for another 150 million years. This was a time before vertebrates, a time when millipede-like insects scuttled about and the bugs we now wantonly squash had free rein. So far, over 3,000 square meters of the Catskill Mountains have been mapped, and scientists have concluded that only 2 types of trees filled this forest. The aforementioned Archaeopteris, great-grandmother of the conifer, and Cladoxylupsids, ancestor of ferns and horsetails. This forest grew in what is colloquially known as the Age of Fish, but paleontologists call it the Devonian period. This was a time of diversity and abundance for Earth's oceans, an age when invertebrates like the pearly nautilus first discovered shelter in shells, an age that would end with the first amphibians colonizing the quiet, unconquered land. If you could go back to this ancient forest, you would be able to walk from its location in New York State across Greenland all the way to Europe, across the subcontinent called La Ruche. This is despite the fact that 85% of the Earth was blanketed in ocean, a full 15% more than it is today. This was likely due to mostly melted ice caps and an equatorial climate. Researchers have discovered the fossils of fish among the fossils of the trees found in the quarry where the ancient forest was discovered. This can only point to a flood. Imagine how quiet it would have been as a great swell moved across the forest floor. Insects, silently washed away without the cries of deer or bear or bird. The trees decaying slowly in the now salty marsh, waiting for 386 million years to be uncovered. An internet solar apocalypse could happen. Dreams of apocalyptic carnage often conjure images of nuclear fallout, asteroid impact craters, war, famine, pandemic, and natural disaster. But there exists an existential threat more sporadic and far less understood. The threat? Our sun. Massive plasma bubbles are routinely boiling and popping across the surface of the sun. These explosions are called solar flares, are visible with telescopes, and leave behind ropes of visible plasma referred to by scientists as flux ropes. Often these solar flares are accompanied by coronal mass ejections, massive bubbles of plasma which emit magnetic field lines into space for hours at a time. These coronal mass ejections influence Earth's magnetic field and geomagnetic field lines and can be observed on Earth with the naked eye as auroral light at extreme northern and southern latitudes. But these solar storms won't turn humanity into a crisp. Rather, the danger lies in the magnetized particles that the storms carry to Earth. An especially powerful coronal mass ejection could potentially knock satellites out of orbit, put international undersea cables at risk, and cause fundamental data routing systems to malfunction. But what does this all mean? Downed electrical grids, blackouts, and the death of the internet. This might seem less destructive than nuclear war, natural disaster, and famine, but the repercussions of such an event may be equally devastating. Airplanes couldn't fly, cargo ships couldn't navigate, the financial system couldn't operate, communication between nations would be almost entirely severed, and vital weapon systems would be inoperative. This is all not to mention the economic impact. It's estimated that a 24-hour internet disruption would cost $7 billion in the US alone. In short, a massive solar event has the potential to throw the entire global civilization back into the early 19th century. Except that we would not have the knowledge nor the systems in place to navigate it. Imagine sitting in a dark room with your family. All the hum of white noise has been silenced. The television hangs like an empty portrait, the lights like doused torches. The meat stored in the freezer and refrigerator begins to spoil. Even the electricity that helps pump water to your house, that helps put gas in your stove, could be at risk. You drive into town for supplies. The streets are dark. The stores look closed, but for the lines of cars waiting to stock up on all they can. You can't call your family to tell them what's going on, and they can't call you. The police force, the fire department, the military are all crippled. Every institution that keeps order in society has its hands tied, and no one knows how long the outage will last. No one knows how long society will keep itself in order. But is this truly a threat? How common are these cosmic events? Coronal mass ejections can occur once a week or even 2 to 3 times a day. It all depends on where the sun is in its solar cycle. But the threat does not come from these routine events. The Carrington event occurred on September 1, 1859. Sunspots were visible from Earth with the naked eye, and the geomagnetic storm observed with magnetographs. The power of this storm was enough to knock out sections of the newly minted U.S. telegraph network, even starting fires. But the world did not depend on technologies vulnerable to these storms as it does now, and civilization is ill-prepared to handle such fallout. That's why scientists, like Sangeeta Abdul-Jyothi from the University of California, are sounding the alarm and drawing up plans of how to survive a potential internet apocalypse. For now, we can only hope that the sun remains relatively tame. Mars may have natural shelters from radiation. Elon Musk stated confidently that his company SpaceX will send an unmanned mission to Mars in the next 2 years, and that he believes humans will land on Mars by the year 2026. But getting to Mars is only part of the battle. There is also the massive logistical and technological issue of returning to Earth, not to mention merely surviving the harsh Martian landscape. Unlike Earth, Mars does not have a magnetic shield or atmosphere to protect would-be travelers from the deadly onslaught of cosmic radiation. And without any artificial protection set up on Mars, how will the first arrivals deal with this issue? One solution would be to send teams of robots to construct structures which would protect humans from radiation. But there may be a less costly, less hands-on solution. But are towers of rock characteristic to the southwestern United States and common to parts of the Martian landscape? A study published in Geophysical Research Papers found that these butts may protect against solar radiation and create an ideal oasis for the first humans arriving on Mars. The Mars Science Laboratory Curiosity rover was sent to Mars in 2012 with an instrument called a radiation assessment detector used to detect levels of radiation from the sun. As Curiosity roamed across an area of Mars called the Murray-Butts region, it found a significant drop in surface radiation due to the natural barrier the butt creates. This doesn't mean that humans will merely be able to land a craft behind a butt and start exploring, but it does give scientists a better understanding of where the optimal areas would be to construct some kind of permanent Martian base. Elon Musk's prediction may be aggressive, but the goal is not out of reach. But what do you make of these recent discoveries? The great white shark goes by different names, from the great white to white pointer. This giant predator is a carnivorous animal that feeds on sea turtles, fish, seabirds, sea otters, seals, and cetaceans. It's also a greatly misjudged animal, with films and documentaries portraying the creature as one that preys on humans. This couldn't be further from the truth. Although it holds this record, the reason humans get attacked by great whites is because they mistake us for their natural prey. The great white shark can consume several kilograms of food in a single bind and is often captured on camera taking down large seals. Aside from orcas that really go after younger great whites, this giant shark does not have any other natural predator. From research made in 2014, great white sharks have a life expectancy of around 70 years. These sharks can be found in practically all coastal and offshore waters, with temperatures ranging between 12 and 24 degrees. Researchers have discovered that female great whites are larger in size than their males, with the males having a length of 3.4 to 4.7 meters and an average weight of 520 to 770 kilograms, while the larger female has a length ranging between 4.6 to 4.9 meters and weighing between 680 to 1100 kilograms. With that being said, though, people have reported much larger great whites, with some great whites reported reaching lengths of 6 to 7 meters. One well-known great white is known as deep blue and is said to measure in at just over 6 meters. Great white sharks often seen around the coastlines of America, South Africa, and Australia. But in recent years, people have claimed to have seen them off the coast of England. One of my subscribers sent me this photograph, allegedly showing a great white shark off the coast of Devon. The photo was screenshot from an app called Osarch. On their website, they state the following: Osarch is a data-centric organization built to help scientists collect previously unattainable data in the ocean. End quote. They tag and track sea creatures such as sharks and turtles, with one of their main focuses being great whites. But this one seems to show a great white shark very close to Devon in England. Interestingly, this isn't the first time this conversation has come up, as various fishermen around Devon and Cornwall have reported seeing great whites, and state they're definitely swimming in our waters. One fisherman in Devon reported that he's had other fishermen come to him and tell him stories of great wines, and the descriptions of these sharks only match that of the great wine. Ashley Lane, who's known to take people out on fishing trips, said that he thinks great whites are in our waters. He said the following: there's more than likely great white sharks out there, mainly off the Cornish coast, but I've heard nothing so far this year. We usually hear more rumors. We've seen a few pods of common dolphins with juveniles in the bay, and there are definitely tuna swimming around too. I think species like this swimming off the coast of Devon would be great, and definitely good for my trade. People would love to see that sort of thing, but you're then baiting wildlife which interferes with the ecosystem. They're not pets and shouldn't be treated as such. End quote. Dr. Ken Collins from the University of Southampton said the following: it's likely we'll be seeing more sharks spread from the warmer regions, such as the Mediterranean Sea, towards our waters in the UK over the next 30 years. These include things like hammerheads, blacktips, and sand tigers, which are currently found swimming off the coast of Spain and Portugal. Though while the potential number of shark species around the UK may increase in the next few decades, the overall number of sharks, especially the bigger ones, will fall as a result of overfishing, plastic waste, and climate change. It's really important we work together to prevent a premature extinction of these wonderful creatures. This fisherman had this to say: I fish off the coast of Devon and I've seen great wines. They're definitely not common, but I'd say I'm 99% sure I've seen a great white. This shark was around 4 meters long and had the general build of a great white. They are not hard to mistake and they stand out, especially in British waters. We have no other shark with the same appearance. The only other thing we have is basking sharks, and it definitely wasn't that. End quote. Whether great white sharks will be calling British waters home anytime soon is up for debate. But local fishermen stand by what they believe and say that there's definitely great white sharks in British waters. Shark conservation is important. With hundreds of millions of sharks losing their lives every year, it's a subject that needs more attention. One way scientists learn about sharks' behaviors by tracking them, but even this has now become a controversial subject. There's many that state that tagging doesn't benefit the shark in any way and can actually lead to their demise. Some wildlife experts have said that tagging a shark can put them under a lot of stress and even cause things like infections. Sharks are gentle creatures and don't act well when under stress, and this is one of the reasons why you don't see great white sharks in aquariums. The process of tagging them seems quite straightforward, but shark groups have listed the many things they go through, and that each of these are bad for the shark's overall condition. Firstly, they're placed on a deck, then they have hoses placed in their throats, something that sometimes damages the gills. The stress can also be overwhelming, which is why when they're placed back into the ocean, sometimes they slowly nosedive to the bottom, something that researchers have said isn't a good sign. It's important that we protect our oceans and the many animals that live within it. Sharks have been swimming in our oceans for over 400 million years, meaning they've outlived other incredible creatures such as the dinosaurs. But wildlife experts have said we need to step up and start protecting these creatures, not only because they're being taken out at an alarming rate, but also because they help maintain a healthy ecosystem. It seems that people are more interested in mysteries than ever, and this has led to amateur researchers to carry out their own studies. One place you wouldn't think would be of interest is that of Antarctica. Antarctica has long been at the center of a wide variety of theories, making some suggest that there's more going on down there than what we're being told. Couple this with the alleged anomalies said to be hiding beneath the ice, and it's not hard to see why Antarctica has become a hotspot for strange activity. So why are people obsessed with this region? Various theorists have said that UFOs can be seen in this location, and that because other objects have been found here like massive machinery, they suspect that government officials have retrieved some of these artifacts. This is not backed up by the government, and they say that what people are seeing is just rock formations. However, those that have studied the area have said these aren't just wrongs, and the people who have retired from the government have backed up these claims that the UFO owns. It's not just unidentified flying objects that are said to be under the ice. Others have said they found an entrance that leads into the middle of the Earth. There's some people that believe our Earth actually holds another mini-Earth inside it, saying that there's various locations across the planet which act as entrances. This discovery was made by an amateur researcher while scanning Google Earth, and they think they've found one of these entrances. They state that the hole is big enough for man-made objects to go in and out. Another interesting idea that's gained some traction over the years is that UFOs don't actually come from the sky, but rather they live inside our planet and inside our oceans, and they use these alleged entrances to go to and from their bases. Although this idea sounds interesting, it's important to note that scientists have said this isn't true, and there's no proof of this other than strange-shaped rocks. One of the most interesting accounts in regards to these mysterious entrances is that of Admiral Richard E. Byrd. Going back in 1947, Richard Byrd of the United States Navy would fly directly to the North Pole in a daring mission. Interestingly, it was during this trip that he said he entered the Earth, something that, at the time, confused many people. The second Earth, or inner Earth as it's been labeled, would suggest that there was an opening that he was able to fly into, and that it must have been big enough for his plane. He not only said this, but also told of the incredible things he witnessed. He said that once inside the Earth, he was able to see some incredible sightings, some of which included mountain ranges, wildlife, waterfalls, and vegetation. The animals he witnessed, though, were different to our modern-day animals, saying that they were much larger in size and looked prehistoric. It's said that he was able to see a creature that closely resembled that of a mammoth, and that it was hiding in the vegetation. While flying above this interesting new world, he was able to find somewhere to land, after which he said he was then greeted by flying machines. Once these crafts arrived, they then signaled him to follow them to another location. He described these machines as being much more advanced than his plane, and that piloting them were beings much more advanced than any human. Once they reached the location, the beings said this land is called Agartha. After the long flight, the crew needed rest, and the beings were very happy to let them do this. Once they'd rested, the team was then taken to the inner world's ruler. However, they were told this wasn't a chance meeting, and that they'd been trapped the entire time. They allowed them to enter because they wanted to talk to their men about the United States atomic projects, saying that they needed to be stopped as no good is going to come from them. They forever said they'd been monitoring the nation, and decided that now would be the best time to make contact. This was in the hopes of making peace and moving forward to try and create a new and better world, one where such atomic weapons were not needed. The crew were honored that the beings trusted them. After this short encounter, Admiral Byrd and his crew were then taken back to the outside world. After this mind-blowing encounter, their lives would never be the same again. Back in January 1956, Admiral Byrd once again traveled back to this region. His new crew was able to locate an entrance and were able to fly inside. It's reported they were able to get a few hundred miles inside the inner Earth, where once again they encountered the crafts and the beings. As soon as the Admiral arrived back, the American press caught wind of the mission. However, nothing was released and all information and evidence was eventually lost. The encounter wasn't told by anyone, and those who did mention it were silenced. Unfortunately, although this story is incredible, there's no way to back up the claims of what the men saw. It's an incredible story and one that will likely be told for the foreseeable future. It's interesting to note that Antarctica is not as lifeless as some might think. It's believed by many different researchers from around the world that the continent of Antarctica was once inhabited with that of lush and green forests surrounding the entire area. Evidence of this can be found when looking at a team of archaeologists and researchers that led an expedition in Antarctica in November of 2016 that lasted for several months, ending in January 2017. The team found evidence of lush forests in the region, after locating and identifying several different traces of fertile growing lands, areas of climate change in the past, as well as large amounts of fossil fragments from ancient trees that dated as far back as more than 260 million years. Interestingly, this timeline correlates with one very important event in the past, the Permian period, also known as the greatest mass extinction event in the history of the world. Before this event, there was much more carbon naturally in the atmosphere, which created lush green forest all around the world. This large amount of carbon allowed for incredible diversity, the forestification of deserts, and the ability for the atmosphere to support larger forms of animal lives on land. It's interesting then to consider this idea that roughly 260 million years ago, the continent of Antarctica would have been a densely populated lush green forest, with a tremendous variation in wildlife and ecosystems. A professor at the University of Wisconsin, known as Dr. Goldbranson, argues that the continent as a whole was much warmer and even more humid than many areas today. In fact, he has overwhelming evidence that the area would have been closely in resemblance to the forest of present-day Siberia, a place today with a thriving population, vast resources, and a stable economy. Additionally, at the rate of the burning fossil fuels, of which is reintroducing this carbon into the atmosphere that was lost during the Permian extinction, we will soon be reaching atmospheric conditions once again of which will allow the continent of Antarctica to be a thriving forest within a few more hundred years. Tom DeLonge has just replied to Elon Musk in a tweet regarding UFOs and alien life. The comment came after a tweet was directed towards Elon, which stated the following: "Humans want to know, has Earth been visited? Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, as Earth's great space explorer, is what you think. Have we been visited? We will discuss tomorrow." Elon then replied with the following: "I have seen no evidence of advanced civilizations visiting Earth. Fuzzy pics that are worse than a 7 to 11 security cam frame grab don't count." Tom DeLonge then jumped in on the conversation and said the following: "I think I should introduce Elon Musk to the people that run the UAP task force, because the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for the Intelligence of the Department of Defense have nothing better to do than create a task force that studies fuzzy videos." End quote. Many people hit back at these claims, saying how close-minded and ignorant Elon is being, with one person saying the following: "The whole argument around why there's no clear photographs of UFOs is a frustrating one. Take your iPhone camera, for example, and put it on maximum zoom and see what happens. It immediately goes fuzzy. Then try and take a photograph of something in the distance. Now imagine that object is moving in the sky. Now imagine you're in the car whilst this is happening. It's near impossible to get a clear photograph of anything under these circumstances." One of the things that many people don't seem to mention is that while camera quality in everyday phones has massively increased, they're only really good for up-close photographs. Anything that's over 10 meters away starts to get blurry. Also, the majority of people aren't expecting to see UFOs, so the whole encounter is rushed. People are normally doing everyday things and don't expect to see a UFO, so when it happens they just pull out their phones and try to take the best photo possible. It's not like people can walk around 24/7 with a tripod and a HD camera waiting for UFOs. End quote. While this person said this on a UFO group, what about the Tic Tac UFO that was captured a while back? That's our military openly talking about these objects, and you can hear how confused they are about it. Seems you're a man of science. Tell me how this object was able to go from 80,000 feet to sea level in less than a second. We have no technology that's able to do this, and if you're still making excuses at this point, you're just being ignorant. Even Harry Reid turned around and said that the government has been suppressing information about UFOs, and that more investigations need to happen. This is no longer a secret anymore. These officials have spent hundreds of millions of dollars looking into these graphs. And if they weren't real, why spend so much and set up so many top-secret programs? Stop looking at the world through a human lens and only applying human logic. The universe doesn't revolve around humans. With another person taking a different route and saying this, you're just saying that because you're not from Earth. It's important to remember, though, that people are just going by what the government has said. It's one of their astrophysicists who said that in March of this year, they had made retrievals of off-world vehicles not made on this Earth. This caused some to question what else could this possibly mean. And with all the talk about UFOs at the moment, it got people excited by the fact that the government is being more open about unidentified flying objects. The government's relationships with UFOs has been shady at best. For years they've claimed that we have no evidence of UFOs, that alleged crashes that have happened are just government property, and that the hundreds or thousands of UFO sightings and encounters can be easily explained, and that most of these are just military planes being misidentified. However, what 2020 has shown us is that the government is being more vocal about these mysterious crimes. Various documents have come to light that show us that actually the government has had a fascination with these crimes, just as much as the general public. In fact, they've documented various encounters with these unidentified flying objects, most of which happen when military crafts are patrolling the sky. One of the issues that people have picked up on is the confusion over whether the government is still investigating UFOs. The Pentagon stated that the program was discontinued, but recent news via a Senate committee report goes against this, and even states that they've just changed the program name to Unidentified Air Phenomenon Task Force. The discovery of off-world crafts is massive news and has caused some to speculate about what this means. Some think that this news now backs up what prominent figures like Pop Lazar has been saying for years, while others have said that within the next year the government will make a massive announcement in regards to UFOs. Others, though, have expressed that although it's great news that they're now being open, it's a shame that it's taken so long. For years, people who came forward with their encounters or reported seeing UFOs were ridiculed in the media. They were branded as being crazy or just straight out lying. Yet the very people who denied these claims were investigating these crafts the whole time. And not only that, but making significant findings to back up that these crafts are in fact genuine. This news comes not long after the Pentagon formally released 3 unclassified videos taken by Navy pilots. The mysterious videos showing UFOs have been circulating for years. It's caused various theories to be put forward to try and explain them. However, for skeptics, they wouldn't believe the footage until the government came forward and announced they were real. This is what happened several months ago. As of right now, people are eagerly waiting for the government to release more information. It's amazing to think where these advanced crafts could have come from. The government has been researching this topic for decades, so perhaps they already know that answer. So my question to you guys is, what do you make of Elon's comments? Do you think he's being close-minded? Or do you agree with him? Or so, what's your thoughts on the recent comments from the US government announcing they've recovered off-world crafts?